What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Tight Lines Podcast. I'm your host, and my name is Tyler Plackey. In today's episode, we cover everything related to finding new fishing spots, from how to find them, safety tips, gear to bring with you, and so much more. We also talk about one simple reel modification to completely change any reel you own, and we end today's episode by once again opening up the tackle box to answer your fishing questions. All right. To start this episode off, we need to talk about why are we looking for new fishing spots. So, obviously it's a ton of fun to fish the waters we all know and love. But we have to remember the adventure of fishing, right? And finding these new waters and finding these new species and finding your new honey hole that no one else has found, and how these can lead to even more of these regular spots that we know and love. The tough part, however, is finding these new spots that are worth fishing. Most of these hidden gems are exactly that, and that's the issue. They're hidden, meaning they're going to be extremely hard for us to find and access. The easiest way that I have found so far to find new spots, at least in my opinion, my basis of starting, is I'll hop on Google or Apple Maps and I will just start looking for water systems. I will look for rivers and creeks. I will look for ponds. I will look for lakes I don't know exist. And then from there, I'll kind of mark them. And then from there, I'll start looking up and down. If it's a river or a creek, I'll look for points that look like they should be fishy, if that makes sense. You're looking for turns where it might get a little bit deeper, looking for any sort of structure where there's going to be shade lines, big tree lines and stuff where fish might be able to hide. Just kind of looking for stuff that I can find on maps. I'm also at this point looking for access points, and that goes for all bodies of water. How can I get to this body of water? Where can I park? Is there open free parking? Is there, do I have to pay for parking? Am I going to have to walk a mile from a parking lot? And is the parking area even going to be safe, or is my car going to get broken into? Which, obviously none of us want that. So once I do this, what I'm looking for, obviously, is a public access point and typically free. Specifically when it comes to ponds and lakes, making sure that it's not fully private, that it's not all just for residents only. I'm going to look to see if there's some sort of trail that goes through there where I can park and walk this trail. I want to make sure I'm not running through anyone's backyard. And at that point, it's kind of a judgment call on your end on when you're looking on maps. Like, hey, does this look public? Does this look private? Does it look like someone I'm going to be able to get to? And obviously, we don't want to give anglers a bad name by trespassing and, getting on someone else's property and, getting run off or getting the cops called on us. But also remember, it never hurts to just knock on a door, knock, 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 and ask for permission to fish. Sometimes people are going to say no, sometimes they're going to say yes. But about the worst thing they can do is just say, no, sorry, I don't let people on to fish. When you're, again, looking at lakes and rivers, we're looking for parking spots, looking for trails down to the water systems. We're looking for access points. We're looking for, just simple ways to be able to get into the water system. Another way to look for spots once you've found a water system is to look for online topographic maps. This is more towards rivers, but remember rivers, their bottom, just because of current, they change so much, so these maps may not be perfect. But what you're looking for is you're not looking for like a specific spot, like, oh, this spot says it's 12 foot deep, we need to fish this 12-foot spot. What you're looking for is you're kind of analyzing trends of the whole river system. So for me in Indianapolis, I look at like the White River. And what I do is I look and say, okay, where does it typically within a river system get deeper? Does the White River like to get deeper where it's straight or where it curves? Typically, obviously, it's where it curves. It's into that curve. I'm on that back end on the wide side is where it gets deep because that's just where all the water runs through and cuts and digs down. I'm also looking for, where does it look like there's bridges? Where does it look like there's dams? Where does it look like there's other water systems feeding in and out of it? Just looking for any way that shows, any sort of trend that's like, hey, this is where fish might be. But also remember that, fish are living, breathing creatures, and it's not an exact science. And just because it looks like there should be fish there doesn't mean there's fish. And trust me, I have way too much experience in that. You get to a place and you say, oh my God, there's going to be a trillion fish here. And you fish it for 11 hours and there's just nothing. You're like, well, oh, okay. So, so Google Maps, going through looking for trends, but also don't be afraid to hop on Facebook groups. While, no one's going to give up their best spot, their honey hole, any special, they are going to at least lead you in the right direction. I go on, I've been getting in some catfishing recently and trying to, land a couple catfish, and I've got a story about that later, funny enough. But where was I going with that? Darn it. But I'm trying to find these spots. Sorry guys, I lost my train of thought there. That's so funny. I'm trying to find these spots, and I can't go out and walk the entirety of the White River by myself. I can't go walk, these entire reservoirs by myself, and I don't have a boat to go up and down and look for spots. So I'm kind of just relying on, again, topographic maps, looking for access points, but I'm also relying on people online being nice, and saying lead me in the right direction. At the same time, though, nothing beats actually going out and, getting boots on the ground, putting in the work. I was out fishing this past week in the evening, and I was out wet wading. I'm not going to say where, because I'm not giving up my spot. And I'm wet wading. I come up to this bend that I've been wanting to hit. I'd seen some nice fish in it from above, and I was like, okay, I want to get down in here and see if I can't catch a couple nice smallmouth. And as I approach, I'm like, holy cow, that thing is huge. And I look at it, and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm in this 10-foot wide creek that, most of the time isn't more than, knee deep for me. But there are some deep spots. And I get to this deep bend, and there's a tree in there. And surrounding this tree is probably 10 or 11 carp. And I saw one or two that were probably pushing 30-pound carp. I mean, absolutely ginormous carp for this tiny river system. They have nowhere to go. Which means that this weekend I'm going back there and I'm going back to catch these carp. I'm gonna get my carp gear out with me. We're gonna go trounce through the woods and go find some carp and hopefully pull one or two out of there. But I would have never known that there were carp in this little creek without going out and actually putting boots on the ground and working and finding this spot. So obviously the biggest thing you need to do once you analyze these spots and you found where you want to go is to actually go out and get your feet in the water. Or I guess on the bank if you're not actually getting in the river. Take your kayak, take your boat, whatever it is, and just go out and work the spots and look, because you can't find fish sitting on Google Maps. You can find a good spot to try, but you're never going to actually find a fish until you get out on the water. All right, so we found our spot. We've talked about going out. One obvious, very important thing we need to discuss when you're out finding these new spots is important safety practices for you guys to keep in mind. Wouldn't be a good episode if I wasn't going to talk to you guys about, hey, here's how to do it, but do it right. So I got 3 tips here for you guys. And again, do with them what you would like. Some of them may be like, well, duh. But, if I don't say them, I feel bad. So the first tip is to try and go with someone else. But if you do have to go alone, make sure someone knows where you will be. Have someone that you can share your location with on your phone. Someone that, if you don't respond in 12 hours is actually going to be worried about you and will, try and find you. And I have a great story about that. So this past week, again, went out, different day, and decided I wanted to catfish on the river. And so I go out and I had found these spots on Google and I wanted to try them. So I parked and walked about a half mile to these spots and got down and set up, and I was out, I had my line in the water, and I was out smallmouth fishing at the same time while I had my catfish line in the water. And I didn't really like where I was. It was very muddy, very slippery. I was like, okay, I want to move down a bit. And I'm standing down by the river, and I slipped in once or twice, which we'll talk about that for number 3. But because it was super muddy, the bank was old sandbags they'd used to build up the bank, and the sandbags were muddy apparently. And apparently just standing still, you just kind of fall in the river. But while standing down there, I noticed a spot about 30 or 40 foot down river that was real nice, flat, sandy gravel that looked like actually a pretty good spot. So I, I went up and walked up and back up to the main trail and walked down about 40 foot and found the entry point and kind of walked over, and there was a really pretty steep hill down. And I was like, I'm sitting there, I got some of my gear with me, and I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to get down this. So I kind of am like, okay, I'm going to take this real nice and slow. And so I start to inch my way down, and apparently there's still mud on my shoes, and I fell on my butt and slid down this hill about 20 foot to the river. Yeah. And so now I'm down at the bottom of the river, and I kind of stand up and look up. I'm like, oh crap, that's not good. So I try to climb back up the hill, and I'm unable to climb back up the hill. It's way too slippery. And so about 20 minutes later, I had finally decided to throw my gear up the hill as far as I could. And I got most of it all the way up. My Plano tackle box full of all my weights and hooks and everything just went everywhere. And so that was fun to clean up and reorganize. And then I had to climb around, and I was literally halfway climbing trees to get up this hill because I was stuck down there. And funny enough, I had left my phone over with my other stuff because I was like, I'm just going to run over and check this out and come back. And so I actually didn't have any way to call anyone. So have your phone with you is the moral of the story. Make sure it's charged, so that if you do get stuck somewhere, you can call for help. Don't pull a me. That was not a fun situation with it being 97 and humid and, being not, me falling down hills and, not feeling really good. So that is tip number one is if you're, go with someone, but if you have to go alone, make sure someone knows where you will be, share your location with them, make sure they're trustworthy and that they'll actually check up on you. Tip number two is to carry some sort of protection with you. This is completely open to what you believe is good protection, whether you want it to be a knife, which I like to carry a knife. You can carry a firearm if you'd like, if you feel like that's something that you need, and I do recommend firearms. Bring some sort of, just something to protect yourself. I'm not saying that you're going to someone's going to sneak up on you, but, a lot of these spots are going to be out under bridges and out, in kind of areas where there's not a lot of high traffic because it's a honey hole, and you never know who or what you're going to run into. Also, make sure while you're out there to be aware of your surroundings. Don't be wearing earbuds or headphones. If you want to play a little music, that's fine. But, I would make sure that you are aware of who's around you, what's around you, and just overall, be a wise individual while you're out there. Don't do anything stupid. Just because obviously we all leave to go fishing. We all want to go home from fishing. And that brings me to my third point, which I was hinting to at the beginning. It's wear proper clothing and shoes for the weather conditions. If I had known it was muddy, I would have not worn my old wore-out Ultra Boost. I probably would have worn my my mud boots. It's always better to be prepared with, having too much with you than not enough. That kind of more applies in the cold or in the rain. But at the same time, make sure you've got an extra change of clothes with you in case you fall in the river like I did. Make sure that you are just prepared for anything that's going to happen. So those are my 3 big safety tips for you guys. Again, try to go with someone else, but if you go alone, at least let someone know where you're going to be. Carry some sort of protection with you, and then make sure you wear proper attire, hence clothing and shoes for the weather conditions. Up next, we're going to talk about what gear I like to bring with me when I go to a new spot. So when I fish a new spot, I like to bring a variety of gear with me, especially since I know what the spot's going to. I don't know what it's going to be like till I get there. I want to be able to fish as many scenarios as possible, but with as little stuff as I need, because obviously we don't want to be walking around with 6 rods and 3 tackle boxes and, all sorts of stuff. We want to be able to cover as much of a variety as we can while being able to target the species we're targeting. So when I go out to a river like that, I'm going to bring a rod for catfish, and I'm going to bring some sort of a rod for, bass, and I think we even have some walleye in our rivers. So for any sort of walleye that might be down this way. If I'm out fishing and there's a heavy weed bed, I want to be able to punch weeds. There's a ton of lily pads, I want to frog, I want to be able to frog. If finesse is kind of doing the trick, I want to bring something I can, throw worms or Ned rigs on. I want to make sure I've got some sort of like a 7-foot ready. I don't bring a lot of a few things, and this is a huge tip that I like. I don't bring a lot of a few things, but I bring one of a lot of things. At least in stuff that I'm confident in. So if I never throw a 9-inch glide bait, I'm not going to take a 9-inch glide bait with me, right? I'm going to figure out what are a couple baits that kind of cover everything, right? So I'm looking at, bottom contact, middle of the water column, and then top water. So, I'm not going to bring 16 colors of Zoom worms. I'm not going to bring 4 chatterbaits. I'm not going to bring 3 different, I'm not going to bring a 4, 6, and 8-inch Senko. But I like to have one of each of these just to figure out the spot, right? So when I go out and test a spot, like I said, I'm going to take my catfish stuff with me. Then I'm going to take typically some sort of pole that can cover a lot. And for me, that's a 7-foot to 7.3 medium heavy or heavy fast casting combo. And then typically a 7-foot medium fast spinning combo. And those 2 rods right there throw everything I need to throw. Are they perfect for everything? No. Obviously, a 7.3 heavy fast with, I like mono on most of my setups, at least on my casting setups, except for obviously my big top water stuff. So while that may not be perfect for frogging, it'll still do the trick if I should really need it, right? If I want to throw Ned rigs, I've got my 7-foot, spinning combo. And that's the keys. You don't need to be perfect. We're not tournament angling, but you want to be able to try different things out while you're there and see what the bite is. So yeah, like I said, so that gear to bring tip is going to be, bring a little bit of everything, kind of cover what you need without bringing too much. Don't bring things that you're not going to throw, and don't bring 18 different options of the same one, right? Find a black and blue chatterbait, find a green pumpkin trickworm, find a normal looking yellow belly frog, and it doesn't need that. You don't need to have 3 different spooks with you, right? Because 3 different spooks, it doesn't make a difference that day. They're not going to be, they may not be hitting white, but whatever. You're going to be telling what they're doing. So it moves on to what do we do while we are there. So while you're at your new spot, first off, you're going to do what I did and look around for other nearby spots. Because while this spot may not be perfect, it allows you to start looking and saying, hey, while I'm here, does this trail lead anywhere else? Go on a little walk. If there's other people there fishing, look at what they're doing. What are they throwing? What are they hunting for? What kind of species are they hunting? Take a walk and kind of look at local forage. What kind of bait fish are there? What kind of color crawdads are there? What are the fish going to be eating there? I'll look for spots where fish will relate. I'm looking for obviously down trees, grass lines, changes in water color, changes in depth, just places where fish will relate and where they're going to hang out so I can fish for those. Then I'm also going to sit there at the end of the day and more throughout the day, but also at the end of the day, think about, okay, what worked well for me today? What didn't work well? Did it work when I was, did top water hit today? And obviously one day isn't perfect, but was I even getting a look at top water on a day that they should be hitting top water? Or were they sitting down at the bottom, or are they more pressured? Was there a lot of trash around saying that there's a ton of fishermen here? Or is there no trash, which is like, hey, maybe only one other person knows about this spot, and so it's not a super pressured area. Are they going to need to hit stuff that's more natural? Are they going to like stuff that, isn't as natural? Kind of treat it like a homework assignment. Take notes. I like to go into my Apple Maps. If I find it on Google, I'll go then into my phone on my Apple Maps, and I'll put pins down where I'm going to go. And then within that, you can write down notes. And in those notes, that's where I'll write down what I figured out. I wrote down, hey, huge carp here, come back with corn. Or hey, this spot is really not as deep as it looks. You're not going to find much here. They don't seem to relate here. Which also brings me to my point of, sometimes the spot's just not good. It may look great overhead until you get down there and you may realize, hey, there's really nothing here for fish to relate to. There'd be no reason for fish to be here. This bridge is, only 2 foot deep, and so fish aren't going to relate to this area. We're not going to find what we want. Like I said, sometimes a spot just doesn't have any fish, and it's not just an off day, and it's just not even worth coming back, and that's part of fishing. That's the fun of it. Also, always bring along some sort of grocery bag with you, or some sort of bag to pick up trash. It doesn't hurt to pick up a few pieces of trash while you're out fishing. Keep our local waters clean and healthy, especially if you're fishing areas that look somewhat residential, like a pond or a creek. It's pretty hard to kick someone out who's fishing when they're also picking up all the trash that's around and they're not the one tearing things up. Too many people destroy our water systems by just throwing anything and everything in them, and, take 5-10 seconds, pick up that candy wrapper on the ground, pick up the beer can, whatever it takes. So yeah. And then the last big tip is, remember, we're not professional fishermen. And I guess if you are a professional fisherman that's listening to this, let me know. We'd love to have you on. But don't get too upset if you're out on the water and not catching much. Go have fun. Enjoy your day on the water. It is still significantly better than a day at work. So again, to recap, the whole, finding new spots, look for them on Apple and Google Maps. Use topographic maps to locate, depth changes, and look for anything and everything that where fish could relate, but nothing beats getting boots on the ground. Our 3 safety tips: go with someone else, or if you go alone, let someone know, carry protection, and then wear proper attire. For gear to bring, kind of bring enough to cover what you're going to do, but don't bring too much because, likely you're not going to spend all day at this spot. You're going to be hunting different spots. And you want to be lugging around 40 pounds worth of stuff with you. And what to do while you're there: look for other spots, look for forage, treat it like a homework assignment, clean up after everyone else, and just overall have fun. All right, you guys. So moving on from new spots, we're going to move on to our second, good Lord, topic of the day. It's going to be one easy lure modification. Good Lord, I'm so sorry, guys. I can't speak today. One easy reel modification that changed one of my fishing reels. So about 2 months ago, I found a deal on some Dobbins Maverick Series rods, and I've been wanting to upgrade to some a little bit nicer rods than what I've got. And so I went out and bought them, and then obviously I bought 2 new rods, so I needed 2 new reels. So I created a frogging setup with a 7.3 Mega Heavy Extra Fast, and I put a Shimano SLX XT and an 8.2-to-1 on there. And then I created an all-around with a 7.3 Heavy Fast because Dobbins Heavy is more like a medium heavy, and this was a heavy fast taper, and I put a Daiwa Tatula CT reel on that in the 7.3-to-1, I think is what it's a 7-to-1 of some sort. I think it's 7.3-to-1 though. And I absolutely love the Shimano reel, and I got to the Daiwa one. I like everything about it, but the handle. The handle felt small, especially the actual grips, and my fingers just felt undersized. Felt like I just had to pinch on them. I could barely get a grip. And so it finally led me to go online and do some research and find some sort of replacement handle for it. So, like I said, I have a Daiwa Tatula CT and a 7.3-to-1. And I went online and I found it's called the Heightened Fishing Reel Handle for Abu Garcia, Penn, Kacking, Luz, and then Shimano Daiwa. And I got it in the 110mm carbon handle, 24mm TP knob, black and silver. So this came with, it was pretty much just a new handle. And I took off, it came in today, took off the old one, figured out the instructions finally because they were not very good instructions, but put on the new reel handle. And my God, what a difference it made. It is amazing. And for $40, it went from a reel that I had debated on selling to, oh my God, I'm never selling this reel. This feels amazing in my hands. Finally, it feels big and bulky. And I understand some people like low profile. I'm a large individual. I have humongous hands. I have extra large hands. And so I like something that makes, feels, durable in my hands. I don't want something real tiny. So that is my tip. If you are not liking something on your reel, one easy reel modification for me at least was to put a new handle onto this reel. I might look at some of my other reels and do that as well in the future because for $40, the reel has completely changed itself. And with that, we are going to open up the tackle box and answer some fishing questions. Please be sure to write them into the show. You can either comment them down below in the comment section of the episode, or you can DM me on my Instagram, which is Tyler Plackey Fishing, TYLERPLACKEFISHING, Tyler Plackey Fishing. You can also go check out my YouTube and comment on one of my videos there at also Tyler Plackey Fishing, spelled the same. So we have 2 questions for you guys today. The first question comes in. It says, what is the most unexpected catch you've ever had, and how did you handle it? And I think I like this question because I think it handles to how do you, what do you do under, a stressful situation? So I've got 2 stories of this, but I think the one we're going to talk about comes from a video I was doing with my buddy. So I was down, I want to say probably 3 months ago now, 2.5, 3 months ago, in southeastern Indiana, fishing Lawrenceburg with my buddy, and we were out bass fishing, and I had a 7-foot medium fast spinning combo with 10-pound mono. I have since switched to braid, but 10-pound mono and a spinnerbait on this little tiny triangular pond at the front of his neighborhood. And I was out fishing, and this was like 7:30 in the morning. We had just woke up, and we were out fishing, and I'm reeling along this fish, or this spinnerbait, and all of a sudden, my rod doubles over and about pulls out of my hand, and my drag starts screaming. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I just hook into? Because I'm out bass fishing, and my buddy's been fishing these waters and says he can't pull anything out bigger than about 2/3 of a pound. They're just real tiny fish. And I mean, it is just burning drag. And I finally get my drag tightened down a bit. I work this fish up to the bank, and my heart is pounding. I am like, oh my God, what is this? And I hooked into probably an 18 to 20 pound catfish. I believe it was a blue cat. I am not an expert, and I also never got this out of the water, which is what we're talking about. And so how do I handle it? I get it up almost onto shore, but I've got a 7-foot medium fast spinning combo on like 10-pound mono, and I've got a 20-pound fish on at the end of the spinnerbait. And so I try and walk down, and the fish starts thrashing, and I go to grab him and grab my line. He popped my line and swam off. To preface, we were on a extremely steep bank of about 45 degrees. And I was very close to just falling in the water. Got it all on video. You can actually check it out. It is on my YouTube. It is titled "I Caught This on Accident" or "I Accidentally Caught This." It's very easy to find. Go check it out. It's right at the beginning of the video too. I was not happy, and so how did I handle it? Not very well. My most unexpected catch was bass fishing. I caught a humongous catfish on a spinnerbait and handled it poorly and panicked. My other story on that would be my buddy and I were out, a different buddy, we were out in St. Louis fishing, and we were fishing for carp in this lake that he had looked for, and we had our carp bait in the water, and I tied on an ultralight jig. It was just swimming a jig along with some corn on it, trying to see if I could get a carp to bite at it. And all of a sudden, I felt pressure and reeled in a gar. So how did the gar was a very unexpected catch. I actually landed that fish, and I have a great picture of it. And I actually handled that one pretty well. So it's funny, two different stories on how I handled it. So that was question number 1. Question number 2 for you guys today is going to be, if you could only use one lure or bait for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? And for me, I'm probably going to say it's called the Kelly's Striper. If you've never seen these little worms, they've been around forever. They look like the original like creme pre-rigged worms. They got 3 little hooks in them. One at the tail, one in the middle, one towards the front. Just little single hooks on each one, not treble hooks or anything. And they come pre-rigged with a loop knot that you just tie on, or you just put into a into a snap. I couldn't think of the word snap for some reason. Put in, just hook onto a snap and close it. And you just kind of swim them along, and anything and everything bites them. And why would I pick these? Because they're just so much fun, and it's what I grew up throwing. I threw these for the first 15 years of my life, before I knew what crankbaits and chatterbaits and spinnerbaits, and, I was just a casual fisherman, didn't really get into it. This is what I threw daily. This was a ton of fun to go fish. It's what I fished with my grandpa growing up. You go over to the, farm pond and go fish out there and catch bluegill and take them back and fry them up and eat them. Catch little bass on them. They're a ton of fun. So if I can only fish one lure for the rest of my life, it would be the Kelly Striper, specifically in the purple with the white stripe on the back, just because that's what I grew up fishing and I absolutely love it. So that is our episode for today, guys. At this point in time when you're listening to this, I'm actually on vacation. So I've got a really cool episode for you guys next week. It's going to be all about how to prep and travel your fishing stuff when you're on vacation, so you can fish new states, and things to do to all sorts of preparedness, how to prepare for it so you're not wasting your time there. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. As always, please be sure to follow the show. Give us a 5-star review, as it is the easiest way to help our show to grow. Go ahead and check out my Instagram, my YouTube. Both of them are Tyler Plackey Fishing. Again, TYLER PLACKEFISHING. They have the same logo, not as a show, but they have the same logo. You'll see them on there. You can go on there and DM me questions for the tackle box, suggestions that you have for upcoming topics, or just anything else to talk about. I'm always open to talk. As a reminder, new episodes are released every Wednesday at 4 a.m. on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I don't want to miss any episodes, so we are recording this a bit early, but that's fine because we're going to grind it out and get you guys an episode every week. So thank you guys so much for your time and for listening. I really do appreciate you guys. And on that, we will see you next week.